Welcome, educators. Whenever a new set of state standards rolls out, I know the collective heartbeat in teacher workrooms tends to speed up a bit, and the coffee machine definitely goes into overdrive. But today, we're going to reframe the upcoming 2024 English Language Proficiency Standards, or ELPS, transition. Honestly, this is not just another heavy burden of compliance. Instead, think of this explainer as your guide to a really powerful, well-structured upgrade to your existing bilingual teaching toolkit. We're going to walk through exactly what these changes mean for you and your K-5 emergent bilingual students, and we'll focus heavily on the practical, empowering shifts in these updated standards. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the timeline, then move to an asset-based approach, look at the overlap, explore the instructional impacts, and finish up with a vocabulary breakdown. All right, Section 1, the timeline. When does this all actually happen? So let's address the most pressing, anxiety-inducing question on your mind right off the bat. When do these new standards actually hit our classrooms, and when are the kids going to be tested on them? Well, take a collective deep breath. Beginning with the 2026-2027 school year, all of the 2024 ELPs must be implemented in your daily instruction. But, and this is a big but, you have a testing grace period. For the 2026-2027 and the 2027-2028 school years, the TELPAS tests will only assess the 2024 standards that overlap with the older 2007 ELPs. Basically, this means you have 2 full years to align your daily teaching practice with the new standards before the state assessment fully holds your students accountable for the entirely new material. Moving right along to Section 2, an asset-based approach, a philosophical shift. Now that the timeline anxiety is out of the way, let's look at the why. The 2024 ELPs represent a massive, macro-level shift in educational philosophy toward what we call an asset-based approach. I want to read this exact language straight from the new standard documents because it is just so incredibly powerful. The state now explicitly tells us to acknowledge and leverage the existing funds of knowledge students possess, including linguistic repertoire, cultural heritage, and background knowledge. Just think about how beautifully this validates our emergent bilingual students. It officially declares that what they already bring into your classroom is not a hurdle to overcome, but literally the foundation to build upon. Let's de-jargon those pedagogical terms for a second. Linguistic repertoire and cultural heritage simply mean that a student's native language, along with their life experiences at home, are the absolute key to unlocking their English potential. It is an explicit shift away from a deficit mindset. Think of it this way. If a student knows a concept in Spanish or Vietnamese or Arabic, they don't lack knowledge, right? They just need the English bridge to express it. The 2024 ELPS are basically asking you to intentionally be that bridge builder.
That brings us to Section 3, the overlap, building on what you know.
A really common fear when standards change is that sinking feeling that you have to toss out all your old lesson plans and start completely from scratch. Well, I am thrilled to tell you that is absolutely not the case here. Now, what's really interesting about these Venn diagrams is that intersection right in the middle. That represents the assessed overlap between the 2007 ELPs you already know inside and out and the 2024 ELPs we're adopting. That middle section, it represents all the teaching strategies, the scaffolding, and the language support techniques you are already doing brilliantly. This proves you already possess a massive chunk of the needed expertise. You really aren't starting over, you're just refining. Okay, Section 4. Instructional impacts. Let's look at a typical Tuesday morning in K-5. Let's funnel down from that macro philosophy into the micro. What did these refinements actually look like for you during a Tuesday morning listening or speaking lesson? Standard 1A is a perfect example. The old 2007 standard simply asked students to distinguish sounds and intonation patterns. It was, well, a bit passive. But look at the 2024 upgrade. Distinguish sounds and intonation patterns by responding with gestures or images, orally or in writing. See the difference? The new standards demand visible, scaffolded student responses. We can no longer just assume they hear the difference between a question and a statement. We actually have to give them a structured way to show us. So, the absolutely crucial point here is, what is the real instructional impact of this text change? How must this subtle shift actually change your everyday lesson planning? Quite simply, it means moving from passive listening to active demonstration in every single lesson. Here are the exact empowering actions you're going to take based on the 2024 ELPS. You'll actively model intonation, like really exaggerating the difference between a statement and a question. You'll use even more visuals and structured talk. Most importantly, you'll proactively plan ways for students to gesture, speak, or draw their understanding. Furthermore, these new standards heavily integrate learning strategies. You're going to intentionally teach word parts, cognates, and roots, so your students have strategic tools to decode academic vocabulary and context, rather than just forcing them to memorize endless lists.
And this next comparison brilliantly illustrates another major upgrade, particularly for our K-3 teachers out there. This is incredibly exciting. We're moving from the old 2007 standard of just understanding general meaning to the 2024 standard 1E, which now explicitly includes asking for clarification or additional details. Think about how huge that is. We are actively teaching and encouraging our very youngest emergent bilinguals to advocate for themselves when they don't understand something.
Practically speaking, this means building a classroom environment that is incredibly safe for risk-taking. You have to explicitly teach the sentence stems for asking for clarification. Things like, "Can you repeat that?" or "I don't understand the word." You'll be designing lessons that give students immediate chances to draw or write their understanding right after listening to a text. The whole shebang is about creating an active, highly responsive feedback loop between you and your emergent bilinguals.
Finally, Section 5, Vocabulary Breakdown, Social versus Academic Language.
Let's see how all of this builds into the specific types of language our students are navigating daily. The state clearly delineates the two worlds our students live in. Informal or social language is the English they need to interact on the playground or exchange ideas in the cafeteria. Formal or academic language is what they use to build knowledge and process complex material during your science or reading block. The new standards require us to be hyper-aware of exactly which language bucket we're targeting in a given lesson and to explicitly scaffold the bridge from the informal, everyday language to the formal academic language. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to bring it all back together. The 2024 ELPS are absolutely not just another hoop to jump through. They are a genuinely empowering upgrade. They validate the rich cultural and linguistic backgrounds of your students. They give you clear, actionable verbs like gesture, draw, and ask for clarification to make learning visible. And remember, you already have the foundational skills to make this work brilliantly. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take back to your planning periods today. Look at your lesson plan for tomorrow. How will you intentionally leverage your students' existing funds of knowledge? How will you make their brilliant, diverse backgrounds the absolute most valuable asset in your classroom? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and thank you for the incredible, life-changing work you do for our emergent bilinguals every single day.